Here we go. We're going to fix this sucker up and get her ready to go and put her back in the case where it belongs. So first thing, one of the issues we're going to have to deal with right there is that crack. So I'm going to show you how to fix that with some AccuWeld. Not AccuWeld, sorry, Acraglass. Acraglass. Stuff you can get from Brownells. Good stuff. We're just going to get to that. The very last thing we're going to try doing is fixing that part up. But in the meantime, we still have to deal with all the lock parts. And we have a little bit of a trimming to do on some of the sears just so everything locks up and holds a bit better. So I'm going to grab all the parts, take a look at the barrel, and we're going to put this on first because it's the easiest to go on, and it helps us just line everything up in the future. So first thing I'm going to do is screw the percussion adapter on. This used to be flintlock. That would have been a pan, a frizzen pan with a frizzen on it. The screw has been incredibly badly mangled, so I'll show you quickly how to touch up a screw. You can also use the same technique for making a screw from scratch, but in this case I'm just removing a small amount of material with the diamond file and getting a little bit finer, just making sure I'm not going for a mirror polish, but I want like a brushed finish, so super fine, like 3000 grit. Just work it into the palm of your hand. The drill just makes everything go quicker and gives you more even finish. There we go. No burrs, nothing to catch on the finger. So the next thing we're going to have to do is make it match the rest. So in order to do that, I'm going to heat blue it. Heat bluing is as simple as it sounds. We've all done this by mistake to different things, but you just heat it up and it'll get to a certain point where it starts to turn blue. The key is when you get to the color you want, stop just ahead of time and then dunk it just like that, as quick as you can. The dunking, what it does is it just cools the material down and sets that color. If you were to let it go without dunking, it could get a little bit darker than you might want. But that's what I'm looking for. It looks old, it looks antique, it's not perfect. So the sear has been slipping a little bit on this, but again, it's not a pistol you'd go out and shoot. I don't think it's safe at all, and I don't recommend shooting these. There's no need to. To be honest, one of the pet peeves I have is the IMA on the Pawn Stars when the guy has to shoot everything. Talk to anybody who knows anything about guns or collects guns. Cool concept for television, but you would never do that in reality. So all I'm doing here is, again, this is not a gun I'm going to be taking out carrying around, so I don't too concerned about safety or trigger weight. So I'm just copying the same angles that are there, but I'm just cutting the sear a little bit deeper so it engages. If you want to see a better idea of what a sear does, there's the P53 Enfield, where I get in some detail. So I like the finish that the cut has, but what I'm doing now is I'm just polishing using an Arkansas stone, a polishing stone, and all that does is it gets rid of those microscopic burrs. You don't want anything you want to run your finger over it and you don't want to catch anything. You don't want like a tick feel. So that's what that stone is great for. You can't do a job like that without doing the Arkansas stone. The other thing you can't do is you can't work too much on a modern sear without destroying the tempering. Usually the tempering is only a couple microns deep, so you can wear that off pretty quick. So if you do any sear work on a modern gun, you're going to have to temper. Again, watch this P53 Enfield video, and that will give you a good idea on how to temper metal using a case hardening material. So everything looks good, it functions proper. So putting the tumbler, the hammer, now I'm attaching the trigger bar, which is essentially the second part of the sear that will allow the hammer to drop. The other thing I have to install right there, it's a little spring that pushes the trigger bar down and biases it towards the tumbler. Otherwise, it could just not catch when you pull the hammer back. It's one of those small springs, and the sucky part about antiques and any firearm, springs are consumable. They are not meant to last forever. Nobody intended them to last forever. They're like springs on your car, right? Every now and then you got to get your shocks and coils replaced. No different in a gun. The only problem is most people aren't driving around 200-year-old cars, right? You can find those. Everything's in place, I hope. Checking the half cock. It does not want to fall when I put pressure on it. So, good for that. Back to the stock again. We're going to drop the barrel in first. Again, it helps everything line up. And that's that re-brown barrel, which just, that gold pops amazing. I want to replace the rest of the gold in there, but I'm too cheap right now. When I get rich, I'll do it. Or actually, when I get rich, I'll get somebody else to do it. That's a lie. I still like working on my own stuff. That's why I do these videos. Dropping the lock in place. Again, nothing's being forced. You notice there's no hammers. There's nothing crazy going on. So one of the lock plate screws from the back side. You don't want to go crazy. You just want it snug. It's only holding it in place. It's not doing any mechanical work. There's not absorbing recoil, so do not tighten it down too much. It's going to pop out the other side. You could crush your wood. You can do all sorts of things you don't want to do. There's still one more screw to add right there at the front. Now, a good question I have about this gun: did it ever have a ramrod? I don't know. You guys tell me. Do you think it had a ramrod? I don't think it ever had a ramrod. I don't see a hole for it. There we go. Reassembled. Well, except for that one screw that for some reason I didn't put in for the hammer. Half cock. Oh, that's full cock. Sorry. No, that's half cock. What is that? Okay, trigger return spring. So it didn't have a trigger return spring. So the trigger would just flop around, which is really kind of gross feeling. You don't like things flopping around, do you? That's why we buy things, to keep things in place from flopping around. It's a really straightforward thing. I just took a piece of spring steel and just lightly inlaid it into the wood, pushing on the trigger, and it's just bent like a staple, so it just hammers into the wood. Sorry guys, I wish I got a better shot of that, but I had to cut this down. This video was recording was like a couple hours, and then the first cut was 44 minutes. It was too long, so I didn't like that. But you can see there the trigger, when I let go of it now, it springs backwards, and that will push it up against a trigger bar, keeping everything biased and tight. It's almost a negative of what you would think for a modern firearm. If you notice, at some point I put that screw on the side. I don't know why I didn't record it, but now we're going to get down. Oh, I'm reinstalling that screw. Look at this, guys. Some bad editing for you. It's just like a Disney movie. And at the end of this one, Bambi's mother is going to die too. This will be the final assembly for this lock. It should not need to come back off after this. But what does need to come off in order to fix the rest of the stuff, look at all that junk. Keep your place clean, guys. Don't do what I'm doing. But at this point, I'm exhausted. All that was looking for that one screw, right? That's why you keep your workplace tidy. It saves your brain and it saves your time. And probably will eventually save your tools, because if you're anything like me, you might lose your temper and a tool will go somewhere in the backyard and you'll never see it again. Anyway, now we're properly testing it. See, won't drop. I'm pushing on it. Good sear engagement. Drop when I pull the trigger. Half cock. Push on it. I can overcome on this one, but again, it's not going to go to the range, and I don't want to recut the sear too much. So what I mean by overcome is, normally when you put it in half cock, you shouldn't be able to pull the trigger without breaking something. In this case, if I pull the trigger really, 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 really hard, like 20 pounds plus, I can get it to override the half cocks here, but that's not unusual. All right, let's get down to the Acraglas. This is the fun part, and to be honest, this is not something I've done very often. I don't think this is the first time I've used it, but definitely it's not much more than 3 or 4 times I've tried it out. And this might have been the second or third time. So we get the barrel off, and there's the crack I want to deal with, and there's a little bit of issues on the other side as well. You can see there's previous glue in place. But the first thing you want to do is you want to pull out your resist. The resist goes onto the barrel itself, and it does pretty much what it says. It resists sticking of the metal to the Acraglas. This would be the same process you use for glass bedding, a long gun or something like that, where you don't want any gap or any movement possible. So I put it on, set it aside, let it dry. Nothing fancy to that. I think 2 coats is probably a good idea. So now we're getting ready to mix up the actual epoxy. I don't like wasting stuff, so I try to get just as much as I need. In this case, I actually probably got a little bit more. It's 2 parts. I pre-mixed the color simply because I'm always going to be using black, and I don't want a half-empty bottle of dye lying around to make a mess. I'd rather have a whole bottle of gel to make a mess. So now I'm stirring it together. One thing I would recommend doing is just getting something like a heat gun or a hairdryer, even better. Something with a little bit of heat, and warm it up. And now what I'm doing is pretty self-explanatory. I'm putting it in there, but I'm using my fingers to open up that gap a little bit. So I'm sure I'm getting glue into the broken part, not just onto the surface. And this is double time. It's got a pretty long shelf pot life, so I wouldn't worry about time and it setting up on you. It's not like 5-minute epoxy. You got a couple hours to work with it before it starts to really gel. So once you get all this stuff in to all the cracks and wherever you want it, you're going to have to do the scary part, which is put that barrel back on. And that's what's been done there. And I've used a little bit of rubber hose, silicone hose, gas line from a hobby store is where you can get it for RC cars and planes. Very stretchable. It doesn't, nothing can stick to it because it's silicone. And also, as you can tell, it's very hard to get untied. And this is double time, so that was like 5 minutes, or felt like it. All right, so once you get that off, here comes the scary part. Did you, well, you gotta take your screws out, right? But the scary part is, did you glue your barrel to your, oh, hey, déjà vu all over again, guys. Another sign of Disney editing. I don't know why. Anyways, I don't know what happened there. I'll blame Shotcut, my editing software. This wasn't me, blame your tools. So we're back with here all over again. Take that screw out, guys. And pray you did not glue your barrel to your stock. Because if you did, you're going to have a hard time getting it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a long dowel or wood or something soft, softer than the metal, and I'm going to shove it down that barrel. And then what I'm going to do is just let gravity do the work. Oh, there you go. That was a very light tap. That was not using a lot of force. But don't use a lot of force. Tap, 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 tap. Eventually it will give. And I'm just inspecting, see if there's any glue. There's no glue on the barrel. And what I'm doing now is I'm carefully with a knife trimming off the excess glue that has squeezed out along the edges. It looks more aggressive from the video, but the reality is I'm not actually going that hard. And then my favorite of all things, the Fiebing's saddle wax, essentially. I don't know what they call it. What do they call that? They call it, I can't get to it because I have so much garbage lying around here now. They call that, how come my shop doesn't like me? Fiebing's Golden Mink Oil. Grab that off Amazon, guys. I recommend for everything. I've never seen it interact funny with metal. No rust, no verdigris, nothing funny to the wood. Essentially just wax and oil, exactly what you'd want in a museum quality thing. And now we are done. Voila. Thank you guys. Please like, subscribe. And there won't be any more of these videos, but I'll have some new stuff coming out for you in the future, as usual. And hopefully we're getting some more modern stuff, and I'll get out to the range soon. Thanks, guys. See you later.